everybody. Welcome back to the Technology Evangelist podcast. I'm Dr. John Fluke, Technology Evangelist, and we're sponsored by Medidenta Digital. And today we are going to talk IT and geeky kind of computer stuff, but something that dentists, I think, really need to be aware of, because we're going to delve a little bit into the whole thing of why dentists need security in their office. And to help me on that is a good friend of mine, Tasha Dickinson. Tasha owns Sylogent, which is a cybersecurity firm that sort of specializes in the dental field. She's in the dental field herself. She's married to a dentist, so she knows, what we need, and she hears it and talks it all the time. So with that, Tasha, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here and to have the conversations. Hopefully, we'll talk a little bit about, the security side of things and everything else, but I think we're going to get to talk a little bit about some of the new tech that's coming out. And I
Yes.
think, some of the exciting parts are things that are happening outside of the dental industry and how dentists can kind of harness that a little bit. So I'm super excited to maybe delve into that a little bit as well.
You know, that triggered a thought. I read a book a while back, and I apologize, everybody, I can't remember the title, but it said that it was about innovation. And it said that in a given field, like dentistry, 75% of the innovation ideas actually come from outside that field. And the example they gave was that, somebody will go into a field and, maybe for the last 10 years, they've been working in like petroleum exploration or something. And they will say, when I worked at Exxon, we did this.
Yeah.
And suddenly people will go, oh my gosh, that's genius. We never thought of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, bringing that in from the outside, I think is going to be super, super cool.
Yeah.
So I always start off with an origin story because I think they're
Yeah.
fascinating. So Tasha, tell me, you're an IT and computer gal, but how did you get to this point? What got you here?
Yeah. So I have always been in technology. I actually met my husband we went to Dartmouth Engineering. We didn't overlap, but that's where I met him. We both have engineering degrees, and I had done a dual degree with a computer science degree, but I'd always stayed tech. And he actually went back, he got his dental degree and then ended up in dentistry with his father and his sister up here in Vermont. And I stayed tech. And so I ended up working for Mass General doing business consulting. I worked for a Department of Defense company, kind of tooled around, did various things. And the last round, I ended up as a product manager in computer hardware. And that was an amazing experience to understand and see how computer hardware is both built but designed. I was staying up working with designers at 10 o'clock at night in Taiwan, being able to lay out motherboards, but understanding how they both did well, but also how they failed. We did a lot of failure analysis in this industrial computer company. And so I started talking to my husband and other people and was sort of like, why do you guys buy bad computers and expect expect good results out of this? And they're like, oh, well, aren't all computers created equal? And it's like, no, there's 200,000 parts in a computer, and any one of those can fail. When computers go bad, there is a little bit of head scratching, and it's interesting to actually see where they fail. And so that's actually what started out the whole, why don't we take a look at how you guys do computers in dental offices? This is so important for you guys to remain up and to be working and have it work as soon as you need it to work. That, it kind of got me into thinking, like, how are we dealing with this and everything else? And obviously, with my husband being a dentist, I got to play around a little bit and put some computers into his office and try some different things out. But it really got me looking at how are we helping dentists remain up? How can we help them provide excellent patient care? And how are they using technology really to kind of help patients and help run their businesses smoothly? And from that, kind of it got me a little frustrated that I didn't see it happening well in the dental industry. And so I decided to start this company. But it very quickly evolved, especially in 2020 when things were, you know, not happening maybe the way we all wanted it to.
Sure.
But it definitely evolved into how come nobody's taking care of security and how come nobody's helping you with all these things? Because you guys are so busy running your business, right? I
Yeah.
keep telling people the reason that you guys are successful is because you are both a business owner and you're also the producer.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand why you didn't have somebody to help watch your back, help you with taking a look at the risk in your business, and taking a look at how technology was helping you or making sure that technology was helping you. And so that's really where I started my company, is really in an endeavor to help technology be an asset rather than a liability in your businesses.
You know, I don't know if I've said this here before, but I know I've said it plenty. And you said it well too. Dentistry is really unique because in most businesses, if if you run a business that makes something, I'll use automotive, if you make cars, there's somebody that runs the business of the plant.
Yeah.
But in dentistry, that same person is one of the guys on the assembly line putting the cars together.
Yeah.
And there's two full-time jobs there that
Mhm.
people, I mean, lots of late nights and lots of stress on that. And then you throw something, like IT into it, which, has exploded in the last 20 years. And
Mhm.
it's like you can't be an expert in everything.
No.
I mean, dentistry has specialists for a reason. People are like, I'm fascinated by, surgery, I'm fascinated by root canals. And that's really what I want to do. And so, you get something, as I'm a general dentist, and you get something as a general dentist, and you look at that and you're like, I think that's a little bit beyond my skill set. We don't think twice about telling someone you need to see somebody that knows more, or, does this more frequently than I do. And
Mhm.
I've always been screaming from the mountaintops the whole time that I've been doing this side of my career, is that you need to find people to partner with,
Yeah.
because just like you refer because you trust people that are better at it than you are, it's the same thing. You need to refer, your computer stuff to somebody that really knows it, eats it, sleeps it, lives it, breathes it, as
Yeah.
opposed to trying to figure it out yourself. I mean, I think that just makes good business sense. The guy that's running the car factory isn't doing his own IT either.
Yeah.
It's got a
Yeah.
whole, group of
And
people.
I think too, I don't know if it's slowly crept up on us or what. I know that most people are tech savvy, right? I actually work with several dentists who that's what they did before dentistry, or they were engineers themselves. It's not that you can't do it. It's just that when you think about how tech is integrated into your businesses nowadays, right? I often tell people, like, if your dental assistant didn't show up for the day, what would you do? Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's tough, right? But you make it. You'll make it with a dental assistant. But what happens if your server doesn't show up for the day? Right? If all
Uh-huh.
your computers are down? I mean, immediately everybody's like, well, we'd be calling patients to tell them to reschedule. It's
Yep.
it's hard. I mean, I think it's kind of snuck up on a lot of us that it has become such an integral part of the business. And the way that we have kind of set up dentistry also means that our businesses are in that computer as well, which means, right,
Yep.
financially, that's where we're vulnerable. We are really vulnerable there, and people are not realizing, I think, the that risk that they have in their business, and that oftentimes when I go to take a look at a business, nobody's really watching their back there. So that's what
You
we do.
know, it's an old story, but I think it's still poignant. I used to do presentations on how to go paperless back in the day, because I did it in, I don't know, like 98, 99, somewhere.
Mhm.
And I was given a lecture, and this guy came up to me at one of the breaks, really well dressed. He's a doctor. It was obvious he was successful. And he was asking me about, so I use, this practice management software. And can you do that with that? And I was like, well, yeah. And I asked him, like, what kind of, are you taking digital x-rays? Like, yeah. I said, well, what kind of sensors do you have? And he kind of said, oh, I don't know. That's the dental assistance thing. And then I asked him, uh, I don't know. I asked him another like front desk techie question, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know. That's the front office. That's their job. I don't mess myself with that." And I said, "You do realize that beige box that's sitting, at the front desk? That's where all the money is."
Yeah.
And just like you wouldn't turn all the finances over and just say, oh, that's somebody else's job. You're going to look at those day sheets. You're going to
Yeah.
maybe from time to time have your accounting folks do an audit. Yeah, you need somebody that knows this inside and out,
Yeah.
because, well, and I can tell you too from personal experience, I won't mention the company, but um, this was a long time ago, but they pushed an update out to my practice management software and it crashed my server. I mean,
Hmm.
literally, I couldn't bring the software up. And I
Yeah.
was like, holy crap, call the patients. And the front desk was like, that's in the computer. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, good Lord. And people started showing up. And I literally sat down with a nice little grandma and I told her the computers were down. And I said, do you have any idea what I was going to do today? Because I don't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she kind of smiled and she said, I need a crown on this tooth. And she pointed, and I was like, oh, thank God somebody knows. Because, I mean, a lot of people came in and were like, we're sorry, we can't see you.
Yeah.
But I lost a whole day out of
Yeah.
it.
And I think, it's interesting when we see things in the news. It's really, I mean, it's good, yes, that they're bringing news and awareness to this problem, but in reality, the cost of a breach or the cost of any cybersecurity or any
Yep.
downtime, right? It's really downtime, right? I mean, it's interesting. I just saw a news article about Land Rover. So Land Rover had a cyber attack a couple weeks ago at this point. They're still down. They are estimating that they're going to be losing 5 million pounds a day for every day that they're down, and estimating that they will lose probably 300 million pounds because of this, out of lost business and lost manufacturing time and all of that. And so, when I come in to talk about risk, right, there's what is the risk to a business when it comes to cybersecurity attacks, right? There's the possibility of all of this. But when it comes to cost, most people think it's a ransom, right? And the ransom is between 40 and 60. The last incident response I ran, we didn't even pay the ransom. That wasn't even the cost even calculated into what we were doing, because the ransom was small and it was to I think it was Iranian
Okay.
threat actors, which put it on a state sponsored list, which meant we couldn't pay the ransom legally without being, problems. But it was the fact that they had locked up her computers, they had locked up her server, they had really messed up the server software and the server itself. So it at that point, being a 4-year-old server wasn't even worth replacing. So
Right.
the cost all came down to the cost of us to come in, incident response. So we work with some other, specialists who do their thing, and they come in and research how they got in. Did they take any patient records? All of that. The lawyers, the cost of the lawyers to make that call, whether we needed to go to HHS. We didn't
Right.
even lose any patient data, which was fantastic news for us,
Gosh, yeah.
and the doctor. But it was probably $60,000 worth of incident response and worth of down days. And I think it was a little bit higher than that when we started adding in the cost of the computers that we replaced, because it wasn't worth it to rebuild an
Right.
old server, and she lost, I think, about a
Yeah.
week of time. And that was pretty fast because we were able to turn this around pretty quickly. We had some things that we could fall back on, which was great. But I think, when it comes to that risk, okay, so are you going to suffer a cyber attack? right? That's one of those things that you're rolling a dice on whether you are protected enough and whether you've done the research or you have the right people backing you. But even with that, it still can happen. And we're seeing small businesses, especially dental offices, with that attack. Somewhere between the 10-ish% of dentists that I've worked with have had an attack already. And we're seeing, small businesses have suffered attacks, in that 40-ish% range, that something has happened and kind of brought them down at some point. So it's definitely out there. And I think the hard part for us to convince or to talk to people is that yes, it can happen to you. It doesn't just happen to the Land Rovers and the MGMs and the Henry
Right.
Scheins and the Change Healthcare, right? It happens to the small people, and they're the ones that don't make the news. So,
Well, yeah, and I think it's amazing because when you look at the financial piece of that, uh,
mhm.
I've always told doctors I look upon cybersecurity as like the cost of it to me is like insurance. You
Yeah.
know, nobody goes into practice and says, I'm not going to buy malpractice insurance because
Yeah.
I know I'm good,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't do anything that anybody would ever find fault with. And yet I also do some expert witness stuff in malpractice cases. And it's amazing what people, what patients will misconstrue or
Mhm.
whatever, and you're in the soup. So everybody has that malpractice insurance. Is it expensive? Yeah, dental malpractice is expensive.
Yeah.
But I have it just in case. And that's how I want people to look at these kind of expenses too, is it's not like, oh, it's so expensive and I'm a little fish. It's never
Yeah.
going to happen to me. I mean, it happens a lot, but like you said, happens to Land Rover. Everybody knows that name and it's a huge company. Of course it makes the news. But when it happens to Dr. Smith in Tennessee, that's
Yeah.
a single practitioner in a small office. No, that's not worth the news people's time. Let me
Exactly.
let me ask you to comment on one thing, because one thing I've heard quite a bit from people is that why would anybody want to know that Mrs. Jones had a crown done on tooth number 30? That's not valuable to anybody. So
Yeah.
I don't really need to worry about it.
Yeah. And I think that privacy question, and why do we really care if all of this patient data goes out, right? Is is kind of valid in this day and age. And I think it even leads into some future talks, hopefully, about AI as well.
Yeah.
But people will take that data and they will call them up. We've had cases where dentists were not willing to negotiate for the ransom. And so the people who were ransoming them literally started down the patient list and started calling patients and saying, hey, your dentist has been hacked. You need to call them and tell them to pay the ransom. And they are using it to, right? Really, the people who are going to get hurt out of this are the older generation who don't quite understand all of this risk, and they're going to give them a call and say, I see that you had a crown scheduled. We'll go ahead and take payment now. Why don't you give me your credit card number? And that's how there is fraud that is committed against these patients. So this is where it's not just you and your business that you are protecting your patients and their goodwill, and as well as their money. I mean, it's their livelihood. It is kind of frustrating sometimes to hear dentists say, well, I don't really care, I'll just rebuild, or I'll just do whatever. But
Yeah.
it's really about you know making sure that you're protecting your patients no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. It truly, truly is. Now you mentioned AI in there. Let's kind of swerve a little bit off of that and get into the AI space.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the fun stuff coming up.
Yeah, yeah. So let's keep it in the IT sphere for a bit. Tell me how AI is helping you do what you do.
Yeah. So I think the cool things that we have coming up, right? is that AI is working to help us protect businesses, right? So almost all the tools, well, actually, that's not true. All of the tools that I put into place to help prevent attacks from happening have an AI component in it. There is a decision making ability for it to go in, decide whether this threat is legitimate, and to go in and stop it. That's both good and bad. And it kind of leads into the next part of it, which is there needs to always be a human element to everything. But it really does help us get in front of things. We learned after the solar winds attack that happened, right now, we're looking at 4 or 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
that one of the best things that we can do is not necessarily prevent it sometimes anymore. It's being able to stop it. So if somebody gets in, what is our ability and what do we have in place in order to stop that from spreading or stop that from, happening? Is there a way that we can help kind of limit that damage? So AI has been really cool in our industry, right? In the tech industry,
Right.
in being able to kind of multiply our effects, be able to better protect, be able to better trace, and be able to put that into place so that people are better protected. And at a, we don't have to pay for a full team to be watching anymore. We can now use AI and augment it with a few people who can manage the alerts and manage the risk from there. So
Okay. So kind of along those lines, um, is this something that you like install on premise, or is this something that you've set up that their system is, the dental office system is accessing this somewhere else?
yeah, so a little bit of both, right? And I think the cool thing is that, right, we do dentists. That's all we do. We only manage and help dental offices. And so,
Which I think is really cool because that gives you an innate understanding of, the industry that you're helping.
and it is. I mean, it's interesting when I go to conferences and I talk about my environments and I talk about this. There's definitely things that frustrate us that other groups don't have to deal with. But
Right.
the cool thing is that the environments that we protect are unique and they are very similar, and so we're able to kind of use and train our AI in order to be able to look for the right types of things, and to be able to use and train a little bit about what it's seeing, right? So a Dentrix environment in one space can help. We can use that learning on a Dentrix environment in another. It doesn't mean that we're crossing or cross contaminating it,
Right.
contaminating any information, but we're saying like this as Dentrix as a whole, we can put a fence around it. We can say, if you have Dentrix in your environment, this is what you should expect to see. This is how you protect it. This is how you do that. So when we go and install in the next environment, it says, well, I know Dentrix already. I know Dentrix doesn't like to sign their certificates. I know Dentrix doesn't do these things.
Yeah.
So we can take that learning and we can definitely help protect across the board. And it's able, like, we have some programs that can stop and react right at the endpoint level, so right in the dental office itself. And we have others that go up to a cloud that are always looking for what are the latest threats that are happening right now, and are we seeing any of those threats within the environment. That learning and that bridge is things that I think is indicative of the cool things we are seeing in AI.
Well, and what I'm the king of analogies, so I'll use an analogy on this. But what I think is really cool about that is, since you mentioned fence, okay, so here's this office and they've erected a 6 foot fence with razor wire around it. And everybody knows that people won't climb the fence. So then everybody puts up a 6 foot fence with razor wire. But then one night, somebody comes up to that fence with a pair of bolt cutters and they snip, 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 and they
Yep.
get through and they break into that office.
Yes.
By having these systems in place, the minute the system is broken into, it literally tells everybody else bolt cutters.
Yeah.
This is the threat. The threat is bolt cutters. And then everybody can prepare to stop that threat, as opposed to waiting to read online or read
Yeah.
some. Oh, yeah, 3 weeks ago there was a bolt cutter attack,
Yeah.
and this happened, and we're like, oh my gosh, well, how do I fix that? Well, it's, the system sees it, the system learns from it, the
Yeah.
system alerts the others and helps prevent those kind
Yeah.
of.
And I think the other part of it too is I see in my job sometimes is we kind of layer like onions or parfaits, whatever you want, right? But there's
Everybody
that
loves parfait.
everybody loves parfaits, but once you make it through that fence, what else is waiting on the other side? Right?
Mhm.
Did they just break in and that was your only fence? Do you only have one fence or are we putting guards out? Are we, and it used to be, right? You think about how much we used to spend on alarm systems and everything else for our offices. Now our offices are online. And everybody thinks, well, I live in a small town. I said, well, if you're connected to the internet, you also have your office in New York and in Russia and in China and in like how
And you're on.
comfortable and how much, faith do you have in your security systems if your computers were physically located in Russia right now? It's one of those, but it's not. And I'm like, well, actually it is. You just,
Yeah, it
you know,
is.
when you're on the internet, for better or for worse, that's how it works. But I think, yeah, I think that ability to both learn from each other and learn from all these things and also layer in the right tools so that they work together as well is some kind of cool things that are happening. So,
Well, and the other part about that too is that people, I think, don't really think about um, how AI works from a convenience and a speed standpoint. I know I'm kind of a Department of Defense junkie because it's so high tech, and there's a lot of things now on systems that analyze. Um, like there's troops massing at the border of this country.
mhm.
Here's an alert, and then if they were to do this, then they would need to be targeted here, and there's those kind of things. And one of the reasons that they're using that is because the systems, being AI and electronic, they can react faster than somebody who's sitting and trying to digest the
Yeah,
information and then get the information out. That for these early warning systems, it's just so much more efficient. And if you've got that running in a dental office, once again, it can react to threats a lot faster than somebody that suddenly says, you know what, the charts are taking 30 seconds to open and they've never done that
yeah.
before. Why do you suppose that is?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that is kind of wrapping, I want to touch on that and go back to what you were saying, but
Sure.
having an office that is running smoothly as well, right? So that's why that IT component kind of is integrated in with it, is that when your office runs smoothly, people notice when things do look weird. And so they are quicker to
Right.
be able to say something like that. And that actually also comes back to the part that, in my opinion, and this is why I started my company. And I think one of the things I really like about how we do things is that there's a very human component to AI and to cybersecurity and to technology. Because if you asked us, we can lock down your computer, you'd never be able to use it, but it would be secure. And I
Yeah.
don't think that's really what we want, right?
Right.
So it's being able to also work with humans and understanding that humans are the most important part of this whole thing. So when we come in, we do a lot of training. Our company does approach things a little bit differently. We do a lot of training. We teach people how to use the tools, but we also teach people what to look out for. And we want to get them used to computers and systems that run well so that if something does look good, we get a ping and say, hey, this doesn't look right, and I can cross-reference that with something else. There's also the humans that we work with in the security operations center, right? A lot of people hear SOC or SOC team or 24/7 SOC. It's a security operations center that is taking in all those alerts that might alert, right? Hey, we have something massing here. Is that
Mhm.
something for us to really worry about? And so humans can take a look at it. AI can tell us, like, yeah, this is maybe not looking good. We're going to notify you of it. Humans can say, yes, this looks weird, or no, this is just Dentrix again doing its funny Dentrix thing. And so
Right.
we're going to ignore this again. But it's having that human element both to protect and be a part of these systems, because I always tell people your greatest assets are your greatest liabilities, right? Your people are both the wonderful part of your business, but they're the part that is going to be to let somebody in, right? They're going to be the ones who accidentally click on something. And I keep telling doctors this, and they're like, yeah, I know my front desk person is going to click on something. But when I go to do phishing exercises and training, 9 times out of 10, the person that clicks on it is the dentist, right? It's the dentist who says they're never going to do it. And the
Right.
reason that that's happening, I think one of the risks about dentistry that people aren't really watching, and I think this is about general, right? We've become so complacent about, all my personal data is out again, something else has been hacked, something else has been breached. People are kind of like whatever about it. But what's happening is they're creating entire AI generated environments that are giving us giving them dossiers on businesses, right? They probably know everything about all of those people who are working for you. They know, I mean, when Henry Schein got hacked, it wasn't so much that Henry Schein got hacked and oops, your credit card got out. You can change that. But it's things like, how often do you order gloves? Who do you
Mm.
order gloves through? What is your cadence? They probably know from that how much money you make, right? They probably know who's doing your ordering and how to attack them, right? And as they get more and more of this data, they're using it for offensive, things. How can they use this to make money? And unfortunately, it means they can use it in nefarious ways to get money out of those businesses because they know where it's going to hurt. They know what to attack and who to attack, who's the most vulnerable person. So it's out there.
And I don't know if you know this, Tasha, but I was a psych major in undergrad, and it's kind of funny because I just took a lot of psych because I found it interesting. I really didn't ever think that I would use it as much as I do. But one of the things I think is really interesting about the whole security space is that the fight or flight reaction is real.
Yeah.
And one of the easiest things for nefarious people to do is to put you in some way into that fight or flight response. And when that happens, none of us think straight.
Yeah.
We had an incident at my office, which thank goodness the office manager thought through it. But we got an email that looked 100% legit from our power company. And it said, you're past due on your bill, you haven't responded. We're going to shut the electricity off to this location at 10 a.m. this morning. And this came in at like 9. And, person reads this email and panic ensues.
Yeah.
And they didn't click on a link, thank goodness, but further down in the email where the criminals made their mistake this was quite a while ago. And they wanted like go to go to the local convenience store, buy a prepaid MasterCard kind of
Hmm.
a thing, and then punch in that number. And that was when common sense kind of kicked back in for a second. But
Hmm.
she told me, she said, for about 5 minutes I
Yeah.
was completely brain locked. All I could think about was, oh my gosh, I didn't pay the bill, everything's going to come to a screeching halt, it's all my fault, what am I
Yeah.
going to do? And that's what they love to do with these, is they put you into a panic
Yeah.
and you don't think about it. I mean, my one of my social media accounts got hacked one time. And my story is, I was at the Chicago Midwinter, and one of the people, Twitter had it was Twitter that got hacked. And Twitter at this particular time had a big hack, a big breach. And I got a direct message from one of the people at Dental Products Report, and they said, it said something about, you should look at this right away. It's about you and it's not good. So what did I do? I saw the person's profile picture. It was somebody I knew. I
Hmm.
clicked the link. An
Yeah.
hour later, I'll give a big shout out to a company called Scotty Vest. Um, they make geeky clothing, like with all kinds of hidden pockets and stuff, so that like when I travel, I have a vest that I put everything in. It's like another carry-on, only it's clothing. It's a terrific company. But they were just getting off the ground then, and I had bought a few things from them because I fit their geeky profile. And the guy that started the company, he and I had kind of emailed back and forth a couple of times because at that point in time, they weren't a huge company. And he emailed me personally and said, your Twitter account is spewing pornography, about an hour after I clicked on that link.
Yeah.
And had he not done that, I was at a meeting. I probably wouldn't have checked that for days, but I panicked. I panicked and I did something stupid. And that's what they want you to do, is they want you to panic.
People think it's going to be some easily, badly worded email that comes across, right? I mean, they can easily copy a message that we get in our inboxes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Dentrix, Henry Schein, all of those messages. They have all of that and they can make it look exactly like that. IRS, whatever it is. Last year, the FBI had actually put out a warning to all dental offices because what they were doing was they were calling up the front desk and saying, hi, I'm a new patient. Could you, I want to send you all of my patient information. I just emailed it to you. Could you please click it and make sure that you got that and it looks good? So what does every front desk person do? I'm happy to help you. You're a new patient. So excited you're here with us. So they click on it and they were downloading remote software so that they could get into the computers after hours. They log all the keystrokes, they get all the passwords, and from there they could just get in. But that's knowing how helpful our front desk people, and it's knowing that profile of person who's totally happy to help you out and do these things. So yeah, I mean, I know at least one oral surgery office fell victim to that. I think I heard a couple others did as well, but the FBI had said, yeah, dental offices are prime for this, and they're not willing to pick up. I mean, they're not afraid to pick up the phone and call, and these
Yeah.
aren't people in random locations. So so yeah.
And yeah, and I remember that one well because a little plug for the American Dental Association, the FBI contacted the ADA, and the
Yep.
ADA pushed out a big, massive email about it too, which is how
Yep.
I look at it. And I try
Yeah.
and keep on top of this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
But that's a lot.
they're looking for angles. They're always
Oh
trying to
yeah.
figure out, you
Yeah.
know, what works better. And the other thing too is, these are professionals. The people that actually like call the offices or all that. I mean, they're
Hmm.
professional con people. They know what they're doing. The people
Yeah.
that are writing the code for the programs, it's not back in the back in the day, we called them script kiddies, and they were, like high school kids. Oh, it'd be really funny if we did this. Now you're talking about people with advanced, computer science degrees that know
Yeah.
code inside and out, and they're a lot better at it than a dentist is. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
need to have people like you that
Yeah.
know
Well,
this
I mean the other thing too, right? We're good at tech, right? Dentists have to use it every single day, but I can tell you they're better at it. I can tell you that that's what they do. This is what we do, those kinds of things. But I think, a lot of people then say, why should I do this? Maybe I'll go back to charts. Maybe I'll go back to paper charts and everything
right.
else. What's good about this? And I think there are some things that are coming out now that are good about it. Um, caveat to AI is, I think one thing that people need to realize, no matter what, when it's talking about cybersecurity or anything else, you need to know where your data is. You need to know what you're doing, right? That is the lifeblood of your business. Your business is actually in the data. When you go to sell your dental practice someday, hopefully, right? You're
Yep.
selling actually the data. At this point,
Yeah.
nobody wants to buy 30-year-old chairs. They want to buy your practice and your practice data. So that data is both what is, people are after. Cybersecurity criminals know it's worth a lot of money to you. But I think the other thing too is that it should be worth a lot of money to yourself. How are you using your data to help your business? And I think that's actually where AI is really coming in, that's going to be great, and that I'm really looking forward to. And so this is the fun part of my job. I mean, I enjoy, protecting my dentist, right? And it's a close relationship, right? When you think about it, We
Yeah.
are in there helping to protect you. So we know a lot about the business and how your systems and all about what's going on. But I think the cool thing is we can also come in and say, hey, have you thought about integrating AI into your business? And how can we do this in a way that is both safe, but also that's going to benefit your business? And so I want to kind of take a couple minutes to put a little caveat on some of those things. AI is coming out and we're jumping into things like yes, we're turning in Copilot and we're looking at Chat GPT and things like that. But I do want to kind of give caution when it comes to your data that you don't inadvertently also feed that into an AI system. That is probably one of the bigger vulnerabilities that we have right now is people are willy-nilly kind of doing that. And they're saying, okay, well, I didn't turn that on. I didn't feed AI anything. But in reality, all of the programs, any AI program that's within the dental industry right now actually has access to all of your data, right? So all the modern AI programs actually take your data and they ingest it into their systems. They pull that up into their servers and things like that. If you turn Copilot on, Copilot will go through all of your data that it has access to. That means anything that's not encrypted, right? So yes, it's not going to probably get into your Dentrix, but it will get into all of your business profiles. So if you've downloaded QuickBooks or if you downloaded anything else, it has access to all of that. If you go into Copilot and you type in, can you help me put a budget together? And it's able to give you your financial reports, it's pulling those from somewhere.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And
yeah,
this is huge. I mean,
yeah.
Microsoft Copilot it's an incredible tool, but
Hmm.
I mean, what you just said right there is like the Rosetta Stone of this. So keep
Yeah.
going on that because that
Well, I
was
think
really
I
incredible.
think that's what it is, right? It's understanding where your data is, it's understanding what has access to it. And I think a lot of people don't stop and think about that. And in reality, you need to treat that data as your golden goose. It is the thing that is giving you and able to help you, provide service for your patients. So coming up, there are some things to kind of keep an eye on. So we actually do shut Copilot off in our environments if we can do it. Copilot will turn on every single time it updates, and we have to kind of suppress it in other ways. But
Okay.
we prefer not to use Copilot because of its invasive data. If you want to spend some time going through your data and saying this is what Copilot can access and putting in some privacy things, we're happy to help you with all of those things, that kind of stuff. But I would suggest dentists understand that a lot of those things do have access to very proprietary, but possibly patient data in what it has access to.
So
There are,
let me ask you this real quick because
yeah.
I'm curious. Okay, so I'm a doctor and I'm at my desk and I get an email from a specialist, and
Mhm.
most of the specialists now email and they send it securely. But
Yes.
so I go to the site, I log in, I download a PDF, and it says, we saw Tasha Dickinson today, and this is what
Mhm.
we did. And I download that PDF. So if that PDF is on my system and I've got Copilot turned on, it
Yeah.
has access to that, correct?
Yep. Yep. So that right there is considered a patient breach, right?
Yes.
So it's one of those, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can download it into a folder that you can then mark private from Copilot. That would be a good first step. Or two, you download it directly into Dentrix if you can. You can use, right, it's just understanding where that data is and what has
Yes.
access to it. Yeah. Copilot also, you can run Copilot within an environment. There are ways to kind of run it so that it does remain HIPAA compliant, but it still is going to share that with anybody else who has access to your Copilot environment as well. So there's kind of those things that you can put a couple of, boundaries on Copilot, and you
Right.
can help, kind of do that. So having an IT person who can help you walk through some of those things is an important, partnership to have going forward. There are also ways that you can create your own Chat GPT environments that are compliant as well. And there's a couple of companies that are doing it that allow, essentially what happens, right, is you can use Chat GPT, but they'll put kind of fences in between so
Yes.
that your data doesn't get to somebody else. So there are secure and HIPAA compliant GPTs as well that you can use, that are kind of worth it. But again, it's a cost. You have to kind of balance that. So,
So kind of along with this communication and the data sharing, I know that um, so much of what we do now in dentistry is digital. You know, we I mean, we 3D print in-house, we mill in-house, but we still use labs.
yeah,
And lab communication on this stuff is very important. And I don't think a lot of times doctors really think about that piece of it. I'm communicating with the
yeah,
lab. I'm not sending things, encrypted. I'm emailing things, or
yeah.
I'm uploading scans, or
Or
lab prescriptions.
you're giving people access, just saying, oh yeah, here, log in here and here's all my stuff, right? And
Yeah.
maybe they're sending that email and password through email or text message, right? All of those things are not secure. So you are essentially setting yourself up. But again, right, it's that data piece. Who has access to that data and where are you sending it? I think, when Change Healthcare happened about a year and a half ago, everybody realized, right, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, my data is someplace else.
Yes.
And somebody else got access to it when it was someplace else. As it was an interesting legal battle. I don't know if anybody followed that, right? Like the rest of us,
Right.
geeks who are interested. But the idea was that when Change Healthcare took essentially, they took responsibility for that hack. They sent directly to your patients the oops letter of we had that. But they didn't have to necessarily. If you had technically because they are one of your suppliers, you are still responsible for them and how they manage that data. That's why we have business associates agreements that say you will handle this well, and if something does happen, then you take care of it. But I think that was, a huge example of where we send information. How we do that to get our jobs done is an important thing to kind of track and understand. And that's why I think BAAs are good, solely so you understand who is taking that data and are they treating it well? Are they taking care of it? So those labs, are one that they handle all of that patient data, and they need to be responsible for it. So asking your lab, and talking to them about how do you handle patient data, who has access to it, all of that is important because you're still kind of on the hook for that.
Well, and flip side of that, and this may be something about dentistry that you don't necessarily know, but I'll go back to the old days of impressions. If I did a partial denture here in Kansas City, there was one lab in the area that actually made the metal frameworks for partials. And
Hmm.
so if I sent an impression to a lab, the lab would then, pour the model, and then they would send that model to this next lab. And the
Hmm.
lab would make the framework, send it back to my lab. My lab would then
Hmm.
do their part and then send it back to me. I never even for years knew that, this was being done by a third party. And it wasn't a big deal because everything was in a cardboard box. But now that it's digital, those same things happen. And like you said, your data bounces to one point, but then what do those people do with it? Does it
Hmm.
then, okay, so I sent it in a secure format, but then is it, do I know it's in a secure format when it goes to somebody else for
Yeah.
something? And that's important because a lot of things are bouncing around. There's a lot of labs that have people that work from home. And so you
Mhm.
send a scan and the scan goes to the lab goes to the employee who's sitting in their
Yeah.
office. They do the design, they send it back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing too is we now, I mean, in some cases, we do have secure systems that we can send them. We
Right.
upload it into one location and just give
Mhm.
people access. Who's sharing that access? And, are they accidentally? We had one case where somebody had all of their passwords stored together in Chrome, which is not a password vault, it is
Mhm.
just on your computer. They had shared that Chrome login with another person who was doing their third party billing or whatever else. One day they accidentally hit the sync it to my phone button. Somehow that had gotten shut off. They synced all of the passwords to a phone. She went to Starbucks and had her phone cloned there. and all of the passwords were then for the office completely out in the wild. So that
Oh,
came
yeah.
through somebody who had said, hey, by the way, I think it was like a Henry Schein person or somebody said, hey, by the way, you went in and changed your passwords for a couple things that we don't typically see. You know what happened? And they were able to trace it out to where it had gone. They had to go through their entire set of passwords, change everything. And at that point, we recommended putting together a password vault so that you had some security
Yes.
around that. Because again, that access is access to your patient data again, and breaches happen that way.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting. Here's a big push for VPNs on your phone. Because you said Starbucks, and that's what I always think of, because you go into Starbucks and most places now, it used to be that it was a big deal for Starbucks, but you walk in and there's Wi-Fi. And if you haven't told your phone, don't, ask permission before you grab onto a Wi-Fi signal.
yeah,
You walk into Starbucks, your phone grabs that Wi-Fi signal. And a lot of people don't realize I've done this. There are programs you can download that literally I've sat in a Starbucks with my Mac and watched people come in, and I can watch the traffic go across the Wi-Fi access point.
yeah,
And I wanted to steal a password. It's just like, whoop. I mean, I'm just watching them scroll by and people have no idea. I
yeah,
did it because I'm curious and I deleted it when I was done. Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, you walk into somewhere with an open Wi-Fi and you've got every password on your phone. If your phone isn't on a VPN,
mhm,
everything that you send out, if you check email in a Starbucks, anybody within range of that Wi-Fi
yeah,
can have your username and your password for your email, or your username and password for your bank. If
yeah.
you're sitting
We
in
call it
some
we
messages.
call it like creepy Wi-Fi, right? The creepy hotel Wi-Fi.
Yes, yeah,
because people think that, it's easy. We were at a conference one time and somebody came up to us and she said, "Oh my gosh, this girl just bought something over there and then her credit card was hacked." And I was like, "Yes. Well, that's,
yeah,
this is going on with thousands of other people who have access to the same abilities to see that traffic come, back and forth." I think one thing I want to touch on, sorry to like totally shift,
no, no,
back
no,
to
this is
AI
great.
stuff,
I love it.
right? But you're talking about those tools and tricks and everything else. And I think one thing that I want to try to stress that, maybe this is me being the wife of a dentist. When he is talking about technology, I want to buy this. I want to, get this new
Yeah.
technology. I'm super excited that you're excited, but how is it going to help move that, move the bottom dollar, move the
Mhm.
needle on these things? And so I think with a lot of AI tools that are coming out, fun things to play with and everything else, I
Right.
think it's important to figure out how that's helping your business. And so one of the things I wanted to touch on before we finished up today
Yeah.
was what are the things, the tools that we are doing for good and that are helping businesses, and how can we use that? And I'm actually going to say some of the stuff that we can use is free. And I would say things like Gemini, ChatGPT are great tools for business owners. And the reason that I would suggest starting there when it comes to AI and starting there when it comes to these things is you can ask them to be your business counselor, your business advocate. You can create these tools to be somebody that you as a business owner can use as a sounding board. And I think right now, that's what I would recommend everybody goes out to do. So, open up a chat GPT. And this is not, do not enter any personal information. Do not enter any financial data after we just talked about all this, right?
Yeah.
Because just like that phone story at Starbucks, right? Chat GPT is the same thing. They're going to be recording all of that information that you're putting in there. So none of that. However, you can go in and ask it, please be my business coach. And I want you to tell me a little bit about what we're doing. And I want you to help me with what are things that I can do. You can give some generalities. Here's where I'm making money. Here's where I'm struggling a little bit. How could I help increase this growth? And I think spending 15, 20 minutes with a GPT for a little while, or a Gemini Gem or
Mhm.
something along those lines would really help you as a business owner be able to make a difference in your business. And I think that's how I would I would suggest dentists kind of dip their toe into the AI thing in a way that is not going to cost any money and that could really move the needle for what you're doing. So, throw
That's
that out there.
genius. It really is because it is amazing to me. I mean, I had a scientific paper that I was reading, and those are pretty dry. And I, I did a drag and drop right into Chat
Mhm.
GPT. I was like, "Can you summarize this for me?"
Yep.
And it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, boom, boom, boom. Here's the summaries. Here's what they found. Here's what they thought. Here's
Yep.
the potential problems with how
Yeah.
they got to those conclusions. And then it was like, would you like me to summarize this and put it into a PDF with bullet points? And
Mhm.
like, yeah, do that. I mean,
Yeah.
could I have done that myself? Yeah, I could have, but
Yes. But
it's just
yeah.
much easier.
Yeah. So Claude is really good at taking information and dry data
Mhm.
and, putting it into something that is easily discernible and easily digestible. A lot of times, one of the ways that we're using it, you were asking us about AI, and yes, I have the fun security AI things. And
Right,
just like
right,
you guys have, Pearl or, any of those that are
right.
doing fun AI things in dentistry, we sometimes use these tools in ways to help our businesses. So we might drop something into Claude, have Claude summarize it. We might take it from Claude and move it into Chat GPT. There are a lot of GPTs out there that are specifically created to be specific personas. So one thing that AI is kind of doing that's really cool is that they can create these personas and do one thing really well. So that's why I pointed you to Claude. Claude is good at, taking these larger dry papers and summarizing them. And then Chat GPT is really good at putting together the dots. But in addition, those GPTs that you can kind of search out on the left bar, if you hit GPT, you
Yes.
can search out and find marketing professionals and, all these GPTs that you can then take from other places, drop that in and be able to put something together. Oftentimes we'll drop it into Gemini after. I've created marketing campaigns that are specific to dentists or specific to who we're marketing to and things like
Right.
that. We can create personas and images. Gemini, I think, is a little bit further ahead in the integration market. So they're really good at, their Google, integrated pieces, but also they're getting Veo and some of the newer image creation as well. So they're doing a good job with that. And they have gems. So I can actually create certain personas and build that up and feed in information so that I always have a marketing professional or somebody else who knows all about my niche market, who can tell me about these things, and I can help go back and forth and help hone ideas I already have into better ideas. And that's really what I think AI is. It's taking, right, we're smart, well-educated individuals. So it's taking that and all of our ideas and being able to hone them a little bit better and make them a little bit more of who you are.
Well, I always kind of think about because this is genius. I mean, it really is. You go to a conference and you talk to some people and you have a conversation and you always learn so much from other people. Just, this is what I'm doing, or I had this problem, and then people will riff on those and help you.
Mhm.
The one thing I think that's so cool about these and free AI models is it's like a conversation. These things,
Mhm.
somebody else is developing a marketing plan for some other product somewhere
Mhm.
around the world. But if it has access to that, it remembers that. And so then
Yeah.
when you say, I'm having this problem, or, I
Mhm.
want to do this thing, it's like that conversation at a conference, only the conversation has happened between all these people around the planet, and it can assimilate that
Yeah.
and then, help you understand things better, which I'm
Yeah.
so glad you brought that up because that
Yeah.
is really true.
Well, and I think that's the thing about technology, right? I mean, I think that we sometimes go down this hole of I need to have this intraoral camera and I need to have the best pan and I need to have all these technology pieces and these things that I have to pay for. And that's
Right.
true to a certain extent, right? It's talking about making sure that you have enough technology to meet the needs of your customer. But when you step back and put yourself in the business side of your persona, right? You have to run a business. And how do you run that business? And how can we make that business run better? Because I think that honestly is where technology really nowadays can help dental offices or dental owners is really, how can we make that side run as smoothly as possible so that you guys get to do just the stuff that you went to school with, right? That's what you're really doing, is hopefully enjoying what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, being able to help patients, provide excellent care, and then stepping back and having a successful business owner type of persona as well. So that I think that's the thing about technology. When I talk about technology really being human centric, I think that's the one thing that most IT providers don't really get, is how human technology really is, and looking for the things that are going to help that business owner be as successful as possible in all of the roles that they have to be in.
You know, nobody has ever said that to me before on the podcast or any other time. And that that is really profound. I mean, it really truly is. Um, I'm kind of, honestly, this is, everybody's gonna be shocked at this. I'm kind of speechless on that. Because it really is true. I mean, it's, it's a combination of things. And I think sometimes as dentists, we do get hung up on the gadgets or, the task right in front of us. But I call it the tightrope. We all do this balancing act between, I want to help people, but I like to say that you can have the best hands in the world, but if you can't stay in business, those hands aren't going to help very many people.
Yeah.
And we don't get the business training. We don't get the marketing training. They're so concerned on making you clinically competent, which is what they should do in school, that everything else becomes kind of the school of hard knocks, and you only learn from failure. And,
Yeah.
and so, you try something and it doesn't work, but availing yourself of information, is powerful, because then you can pretty much find out, okay, I want to do this. No, that's been tried before and it was an abysmal failure. Well, then you just learn from that without actually having to go through the failure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that is what AI is bringing, is a collective reasoning and a collective knowledge to your fingertips, and the question is, how well are you going to be able to use it?
Yeah.
Right? Are you going to be able to harness that? And I think a lot of dentists are waiting for Pearl Overjet to be AI in dentistry, but I think the true AI in dentistry is going to come first with the business side of things. And I think if business owners, there's actually a book, if you're interested, called The AI Driven Leader. And that's one of the first books I read a while back, probably about a year ago now, that really kicked me on this, like, this is where we need to help dentists. This is where we need to bring them some knowledge, because you didn't go to school for this. I mean, I actually didn't mention that I have a business degree in the middle of all of this, right? And I wish that there was something like that for you guys. But in reality, with how fast AI is moving, you're not going to need it pretty soon. You'll be able to pull a lot of that information if you know the questions to ask. And if you have a coach who can help you with that, whether that's AI or whether you have somebody like me who can help with that, kind of the business consulting side of things to help you get that stuff set as well. It's kind of part and parcel for technology there, and what we can do and what we can help dentists with.
You know, that's one of the things about DSOs. I'm a big supporter of privately owned practices. I'll say that up front. But one of the things that a DSO does, and I've gotten lots of letters from them over the years, offering to buy my practice. And a lot of times the dangling carrot in those letters is, you care about your patients. You went into this
Yeah.
because you wanted to help people. And now you find out that you have to look at spreadsheets and expense reports and that kind of a thing. And wouldn't it be nice if you could just treat your patients and not have to worry about the business side of it?
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, the answer is yes, that does sound great.
Yeah.
If you've got access to tools like this,
Yeah.
then maybe you don't need, an expensive outside consultant, or to sell your practice and give up, a lot of your freedom and a lot of your autonomy. You can learn to do it on your
Yeah.
own.
Well, and I think, I mean, so when I was working at Mass Gen, I read an article at one point talking about the most efficient form of healthcare in the United States is dentistry. We can provide, as dentists, we provide more bang for your buck to our patients than any other form of healthcare that's out there. And I love that. And I totally believe it too. When I watch what my husband does and what my family does and everything else, and when I see my practices and how well they do that, I think
Yeah.
that's true. But I think the other part of it, right, is because they've gone through some of those, some of them have business degrees, some of them have gone through the School of Hard Knocks, they're part of peer groups and other things. But I think that, I mean, again, I am also partial to, dentists' own practices. I think you also care more and you deliver better for your patients. I think it's a better fit. But like you said, that whole thing of how do we manage the business side of thing and the allure of, oh, they could just lift all of my cares away.
Yes.
There's obviously some truth to that. I've seen some DSOs work out, and there's some models that I think are better than others. But I truly think that if you connect up with the right people, if you have the right partners in this, then it is a rewarding experience to be able to do that. And I think it's usually in the long run much more rewarding as a career to have that, if you can kind of balance all of those needs and have the right people to help you with that. So,
I'll so we're pretty much against the clock here, but I'll wrap up real quick with one thing that you said, which I never really thought about this about private practices, but so I actually sold my practice in at the end of 2022, and I now work for the new owner, who is a great lady. Here's the story: is that she's the daughter of one of my very best friends, and in high school she thought she wanted to go into dentistry, so she came in and she shadowed in the office.
mhm,
And about the time that she graduated from dental school, we were getting ready to expand, and I was going to need to hire another associate dentist. So she came in with one of her classmates, and she worked for me for 3 years. And we spun her up and taught her how to do all the stuff. And now she runs it and I work for her. And one of the rewards that I got out of that I honestly never even thought about when I started this journey was, I will gladly say that I got my dream. I started a business from scratch. I built it into something that I'm very, very proud of. And at the end, I had a friend of mine who heard that I'd sold, and he called me. He was like, "What DSO did you sell to?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't sell to a DSO. I sold to one of the associates." And the guy literally said, "You're an idiot. You could have gotten, X times more money with the DSO."
yeah,
And it hit me right at that moment. I said, "Yeah, and then where does she get her dream?"
yeah.
I said I would have sold her. Her dream was to call her own shots and own her own practice. And if I would have sold, and if everybody else sells, then where did she get her dream? And so one of the greatest professional rewards I got was I gave somebody their dream, and that's, I don't know, you
That
put a value on that, but man, it makes me put my head on the pillow at night and feel good.
Yeah, that legacy is something that will live on.
Yeah,
That is a legacy that you get to both see, be a part of, and know that you left something behind on this earth that, you know, that's helping people. And I think that's all part of it. Why we do and why we do what we do and all of these things, right? We're out here to help protect, we're out here to help make sure those legacies remain, you know.
and you see it too because of,
Yeah.
your family and your
Yeah,
husband's
he's
practice.
a third generation dentist. My husband is a third generation dentist. And the kids are, the kids, I have a couple kids who are, I don't, they're too young yet, but
Yep.
they're studying those oral surgery books and other things already.
Hey, I started when I was 3, Tasha.
Yeah.
I extracted one of my sister's primary molars and she was 9 and I was 3. So sometimes it starts early. Keep giving them the books.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully we'll be at Chicago Midwinter talking more about AI. We'll be talking about how AI can be in, hopefully on the business side of things. I've got some webinars and some blogs coming up and everything else. So hopefully people can do some learning and try some things out.
So tell me how people can find you.
Probably the best way to do it is just to go through my website, www.siligent.com. I think that again, I'm a human person. Reach out to me. My contact information is in there and I love to have conversations. I hope that they come to a talk somewhere that, I'll be at. Or that they reach out and, connect up and do a webinar or something, because I really think that being able to connect up with people and get them started on their journey
Yeah.
is rewarding for me. So
Well, and everybody needs to know she's coming back. I'm going to talk to her again because we just scratched the surface here. So
so many fun technology things to discuss.
that's right. One day what I really want to do with either you or somebody is I'd like to do a show I call Tales from the Crypt and just talk about some horror stories because
Oh no, these horror stories are scaring
and
me.
my big thing is you only learn from failures. And I like to say that with what I do, I break stuff and then I tell people, don't do this with it because it breaks. But it might be kind of nice to, maybe go over some other stuff. But I want to get you back and talk
It would be
more
fun.
about what we've covered in like the last 15 minutes of this whole
Yeah,
how to make the office better. So
yeah. Would
Tasha,
love to
thank
do
you
that.
so much for
Thank you.
taking the time today. It's always great when we get a chance to talk, and this definitely was one of those times. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, this is the Technology Evangelist Podcast. I'm Dr. John Fluke, and we are sponsored by Medidenta Digital. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.